try to make it as safe as you can. But you know, if you raise an extra $5 for a kid going to school, and you send that kid home at night to two unemployed parents who are drunk and fighting with each other and all, it's not good for the kid. There's nothing that comes prior to economic growth and prosperity. Yeah.
I understand what you're saying on this private question. So, you know, you tax the last people spending, so any use of the budget. I want to ask a question on who actually is a tax side economics. So, as people spend more, there's a higher demand.
Excuse me, as people leave, I just wanted to let you know that Dr. Goss, Ernie Goss, may come down here, may be here around 8, so if you do get out of your session and you want to come back and talk to him too, you're welcome to do that.
So, sometimes economics is people spend more, demand goes up. You have data on things such as due to lower taxes and spending more on new development, industry manufacturing.
We've got them all. We've got all those data. You can pass it down mostly federal, not on the state. I got some of the states, California, I got a lot. But one of the things that people really forget about with taxes is sheltering of income. A huge amount of sheltering. For example, when you put a tax on a product, the price of that product rises. Now, if you all know the work done by Piketty, Saez, Sancheva, these other people all at MIT and Berkeley, they're doing this whole distribution of income inequality. What they're doing is they're looking at income, the share of income by the top 1%. And what happens is when they look at these, when tax rates are high, the rich have a very low share of income. When tax rates are low, the rich have a very high share of income. They argue that what happens is the taxes make for more income and make for more income equality. That's what they do. But you know, there's something funny about their numbers. They're looking at pre-tax income. There's no way in God's earth that you can tax a product and not have its price rise. So if you tax rich people, the top 1%, which is they're suggesting, you would expect their share to rise, not to fall. Right? Especially if you look at it the average, or you look at it for 1% because you get a fixed number, but it doesn't. It goes down, and it goes down a lot. It goes 22% of all income down to 10% of all income. How's that? Tax shelters. And they're all over the place. For example, state and local interest is not taxable. When Rockefeller died, he had $5 million of his estate in Standard Oil and $55 million in state and local bonds. His sister had never reported taxes at all. She had $55 million, which is equivalent to about $1.5 billion today, all in state and local bonds. I could go through thousands of these. Have you ever heard of something called a 501c3? Now, last 2018, the contributions to the 501c3s was $449 billion. All right, that's just on the income tax return. Now take that $449 billion every year. It gets to be a lot. But also the 501c3s don't pay property taxes. They don't pay taxes on their earnings. Harvard has an endowment of $450 billion, and they pay no taxes whatsoever on the profits earnings there. I mean, I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying that that's what they do. That's what I do. I gave $1.5 million last year to my 501c3. I get to deduct that against my income, up to 30% of my income. All right? It's the best deal I've ever had. I'll give you one example you might find fun because it's a local boy who's made good. French kid. His name is Buffet. Laurent Buffet, French boy from Omaha. 2010. Go back and look at my Wall Street Journal piece on this, but I've done it pretty carefully. And this is not a knock on Warren Buffett. I think he's wonderful. And I really mean that. I think he's a genius. I think he's great. He does everything. And the neatest thing about Warren Buffett is he has displayed his tax return and allowed those of us to see his tax return. Let me go through it with you here. In 2010, he reported tax payments of $7 million. A little bit less than that. It was $6,987,253. Just a smidgen below $7 million. You with me? He also said in that letter to the New York Times that he paid less in taxes than anyone in his office, 22 people, as a share of their income. All right, and he counted payroll taxes, so. Yeah. And he said his taxes were 17.4% of his income. That's what he said. I'm a math whiz, so hold back. Okay, you ready? I took the $7 million he paid in taxes, I divided it by 0.174, and I got his taxable income, which is about $40 million, a little less than $40 million. Now that's a lot of money, all right? But that's just taxable income. We also know that he gives enough gifts away, so we know that his taxable income is very much lower than his adjusted gross income, because he gets to deduct the gifts up to 30%. So I took that 40 billion divided by 0.7, I got 62 million. This is adjusted gross income. It's a lot of money. Okay, you with me? And that's what his tax return was. Now, I said to myself, I'm an accountant. What is your true? Let's not talk about IRS numbers and stuff like that. What's your true? And I said, well, true income for a person in a given period of time is what they spend during that period of time. All right? What they give away during that period of time, and the increase in their wealth from the beginning to the end of that period of time. That's called the Haig-Simon definition of income. And by the way, when you think about it, it's the right definition of income. It is. So I said, let's take a look and see what Warren Buffett's true income was during the year 2010. All right? And the first thing I did was, how much did he spend? Well, everyone knows he eats cheeseburgers, and you can tell I do too. Drives an old clunker. He doesn't live in any fancy. His clothes are all fousty and blue. So I assume this guy doesn't spend any. All right? He's not a spendthrift by any means. Then they're left with two things. I assume zero spending. I said, what does he give away? Well, if you look at what he gives away to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So I went on the internet, found Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation there, and he gave them Berkshire Hathaway stock, all right, which is a zero basis, on his basis, zero basis, and the amount he gave in that year was $1.75 billion that year to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. A wonderful thing he did, I think. And he gave that away. He has some criteria that he says if they don't meet these criteria, you give me my money back. One, Bill and Melinda have to run the thing, and number two, the tax laws can't change. And they have to spend it all within 3 or 4 years. That's his deal, and he does this every year. He also has 2 sons and a daughter. Each of the sons has a foundation, 501c3. Each daughter has a foundation, the daughter has a foundation, and so does his wife. She has a set point, and nothing's wrong with this at all. Please don't take this as being criticism. It's not. It's just our tax laws. And he gives that away. When you look at these, he gave away, I'm going to say about $3 billion to the foundations. Is there? That's what he gave away. So that's how much he gave away. Then I said, what was his increase in wealth? Well, the coolest thing about Warren Buffett is you know where all of his wealth is. It's in Berkshire Hathaway stock. So I went to Forbes 500. I found Warren Buffett. I looked at what his net worth in Berkshire Hathaway stock was at the beginning of the year. What it was at the end of the year. At the beginning of the year, his wealth was $40 billion. At the end of the year, it was $50 billion. So his increase in net worth was $10 billion. He gave away $3 billion, and he didn't spend a penny. His total income was $13 billion, and he paid $7 million in taxes. Now that is 6/100% of his income. Now this isn't a supply side story. There's no increased output, employment, production, product, or anything like that. This is just reducing shelter. You have a lot of that in this state too. And you know, I'm saying that when you look at revenues, and the question over there, you're going to get a huge amount of revenues because people are always going to say, you know, I'll pay my damn taxes. That's what I should do. You know, what you need in a tax code is you need people to like the tax code, including rich people. Rich people are really, really cool people. They really are. And they love America just as much as everyone else does. They just don't want to be ripped off. And so if you have a fair tax system, believe me, they'll pay their taxes fair and square. So that's why you want to get a low-rate, broad-based flat tax for your state. Now, can I calculate the numbers that would give you what I can get from estimates from historical data, time series. Yes, I can. I can do all of that stuff, but it's still the future. And I'm a little bit less confident forecasting the future than I am the past. I've really got a lot on the past. But you need to make it so you have a cushion. But you should do it and bring Nebraska back. I mean, it's your, if I were to say, it's your job, it's your duty. I mean, how can you not? How can you stand there and watch Nebraska go down? Have you seen any of these stories? Detroit, Romney putting the income tax in Detroit, in Michigan. Then they put a profits tax in Detroit itself. My mom and dad used to take me on the train from Cleveland to Detroit because Detroit was embarrassing. The train station in Detroit was the Taj Mahal. Have you seen it now? I mean, I have a little picture of the back here. I'll show you Detroit now and Hiroshima now. And I'll show you Detroit in 1945 and Hiroshima in 19... And they just flip sides. You can't, you know, you have a huge and moral obligation to bring this place back, to help the poor, the minorities, the disenfranchised. How else can you do it without growth? You know, people who leave your state and unemployed people don't pay your taxes. Duh. You tax people who work and you pay people who don't work. Am I going way over your heads? Sorry.
Practically, in this state, got some numbers. Well over 60% of our population pays more property taxes. We got such high property tax.
You do?
He's got a $250,000 house and paying $5,000 or $6,000 in property taxes. He makes
Yeah, no, no.
$100,000 between him and his wife, with deductions, he's paying $3,000 to $4,000. Passion in this state, property, and we talk about wealth, our wealth is a land, correct? So our wealth is people, very cash poor, very asset rich in agriculture. So, what have you seen, an economic advantage to Iowa, Nebraska, Illinois? You got two choices, hard sell on income taxes, property tax, 70% of people pay on that. How does that translate into economic benefit and growth in the state? Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have. I mean, I talked a little bit about what we did in California and how long it took to
Prop
come back.
13.
Prop 13 was put a 1% limit on property, nothing else. We dropped the property tax rate from 2.7% of market value to 1% of market value. 60% drop in property tax rates. And you saw it took a year and a half, 2 years before the revenues were back up to where they were before. Now, the state government, Jerry Brown, God bless him, and I really mean this, he subvened and made sure it happened and did it right. I've got a lot of stuff on Kentucky, which I'd be glad to share with you on property taxes. Kentucky is the worst catastrophic state on property taxes I've ever seen. But you can see how that response will be. Property taxes in 1933, which funded state and local governments, and that's it, were more than the combined taxes of federal and state governments. So property taxes have been the problem from time immemorial. Illinois had a huge property tax problem during the Depression. They had the foreclosures and all of it. See, it was a lagged effect. So you had your property taxes, then you had to pay it 2 years later. Of course, in the Depression, it all went down. So property tax rates in Illinois went up like threefold in a matter of a year and a half. I mean, and just a huge, just devastation. They still have a real problem. You have buildings in Chicago today that they can't give away because they come with a tax liability. The building is worth less than zero. All right? So these are the things you want to... I have been thinking, before I saw your plan, Senator, I have been thinking not about Nebraska, but what I thought might be the perfect combination was a Prop 13 and a flat sales tax or income tax, big consumption tax, either one. Just have the two of them there, where you have a 1% on property, which funds cities, counties, and local districts, and you want to keep those separate. You never want two entities taxing the same thing, ever. You know, you never do. And you never want to put a positive program inside a negative program. Taxes are a negative program. I mean, forgive me. Tell me when I should just shut up and just tell me. But you know, if you beat a dog, you know where that dog won't be. It will not be where you gave it the beating. It's going, but you have no idea where it's going to be. All right? When you feed a dog, you know exactly where that dog will be at feeding time. It's going to be right where you put it. Taxes tell you what not to do. Negative incentives tell you what not to do, and positive incentives tell you what to do. The stove. Don't put your hand on the hot stove. The stove doesn't care where your hand is as long as it's not on it. All right? So what you want to do with taxes, you've got to understand taxes are negative incentives. People will do all they can not to report taxable income. Evasion, avoidance, underground economy, credits, moving to another state, going out of business. All right? So they'll do all they can to avoid paying taxes. All right? On spending, they'll do all they can to get it. When you put in tax credits, you destroy the total system. Let's take a child tax credit. All right? A child tax credit only helps a parent who has a child who reports a taxable income. It doesn't get those who don't report or any of it. It misses the point there. You never want to mix it. You want your taxes to solely raise revenues. That's their only purpose. Don't mess around with anything else. Get the money. If you want to redistribute income, do it by writing a check. And that's the way you should do all the programs. Taxes are there solely to get revenues, and spending you can do for whatever you want, whatever you think is the socially right thing to do, but never mix taxes with spending or credits. You follow me? And that's what I think you can do here in Nebraska. Now, when I heard this plan, I was blown away that that there's anyone on earth who would actually think of doing the right thing, let alone actually try to do it.
Talk about going back to the Senator side of the I'll give you an example. I'm a fourth generation rancher. On the ranch, my real estate taxes are 20% of my gross income. I also, as of last year, I own the Main Street business. From the newspaper. In fact, I go to those newspapers, those weeklies, not daily, new weekly. Those three newspapers generate the same gross revenue as 1,000 head of county average. Do you have the newspaper pay real estate taxes? 0.0012%. Problem becomes the state school systems trying to give systems are failing. There's only two people that run the ranch. It's two roads. Newspapers got 11 employees. So they want a new football field or a new class, and raise teacher salaries. And Main Street loves to raise teacher salaries because that money comes back to Main Street, not back to real estate. So to your point, I also did 14 years on the beef council. So People's Woods for dinner, we collect $1 per head, generates $80 million. If you want to collect another $80 million, you want to beef, it's 0.05 cents. So where does it go? So I agree with you, lower the rate, drive the base to $1 per head. So if you could drive a consumption tax or a sales tax at 3%, across the state.
No exemptions.
No exemptions, no deductions. No
Lawyers' salaries.
everything. Do you know the state that has anything anywhere close to this?
It's something, we have a much higher, Tennessee, we are the lowest tax state in the nation, just so you know. We have, I think, a 9% or 8.5–9% sales tax, which that's our engine. And we have very few exemptions, deductions, exclusions. We have some, we do have some, but not many. And that's our complete engine for growth.
Do you have real estate like
About pretty low. We're, I think, the 6th lowest in the nation in real estate. My house is taxed at about 0.6%. So my house is worth probably about $2 million, and I pay $12,000 in taxes. Is that right? Is that one? Yeah, that's about right. They're very low. Now there is a part of our state that has higher property taxes called Memphis. And Memphis is declining like mad. Memphis about 2%. we're about 0.7, 0.8%, and the rest of the states are about 1%. Now, I've done the property taxes in Connecticut for Bob Stefanowski, who ran against Lamont. And you can see there are 3 cities that have really high property taxes, all 3 are totally bankrupt. They're just done. And that's what you're doing to yourself.
So if we had a state, pay low consumption tax, what would the economy do in the state? Would be your guess?
Well, I mean, overnight, not much. Over 5 years, it do a hell of a lot.
What about population?
Well, I think you start reversing some of that. I think some of the people are leaving actually because they don't like your taxes. I hate your taxes. I look at your state and I couldn't believe how awful you were. It just was mind-boggling. Your stories are, everyone tells me that from Nebraska.
So what about a person on fixed income? You know, the elderly, the military. If they just had a simple 3% sales tax, would they not flourish more?
Yeah, no, there's a logic. You can't take it too far. Obviously, you need to get the requisite revenues to run the public services. So what you have to do is use your wisdom and do the things so you don't have a destruction of all your public services. But I've worked all of that out for a number of states. Now, a couple of states actually did it. But what you need to do is make sure you don't lose all the revenues the first day. We did that one. With Prop 13, we took a big sword and just chopped the head right off the thing.
So instead of doing 3, we start with 4.
Yeah, you're right. That's what you do. With Fife, we did it. We had a plan, we had a bill that would have phased out the income tax over 8 years. Then we broke it into 8 bills. All right, then we did the first one, it worked. Second one, it worked. Third one, it worked. Fourth one, it worked. Fifth one, it worked. We were right on the cusp of just going for the gold when he got indicted. I mean, you never can stop stuff like that.
So if you knew there was a state that had no income tax and no income tax on property taxes, and it had this pesky 3-4-5% sales tax, would you move that?
Sure. I wouldn't. I moved to Tennessee out of California. I bought my house with my first year's tax savings. And it's a big house. Beautiful in the best neighborhood ever. Woohoo!
Well, I'm amazed at what
Yeah, and I just left California now. I love California, but after being gone for 3 years, the statute of limitations is over now. No more. I mean, they had their shot. Now I can go back and do anything I want in California and not pay any taxes. I mean, they're just killing themselves.
What would the rich do with the 3% sales tax? Would Warren Buffett like that? If he didn't have an income tax?
I think Warren Buffett with his would not mind paying $1.5 billion in taxes if you got his rate down to 13%, which is what
I'd pay more than the guy next to him.
Yeah, if you make 10 times as much as I do, you should pay 10 times as much in taxes. You should, but not 50 times. Oh, of course they would. You can't have a system where the smartest, the best, and the brightest, and the most wealthy think you're trying to rip them off. These guys, they can hire lawyers, accountants, deferred income specialists, favor grabbers. They can buy more federal senators, not state ones.
So let's consider the downtrodden, the lower echelon of the economy.
Yep.
Right. Obviously, through our federal system that we have, correct, currently we've got some kind of housing assistance and some kind of utility assistance and some kind of food assistance. But I argue that if you have them pay sales tax on whatever they purchase on their remaining funds, they now have the right to go to the school board and bitch because they participated in the system. We just gave them dignity back.
Yeah.
Instead of saying, oh, you're so poor, you can't do it.
You're totally right. I mean, all this stuff, and it's Jack Kennedy, my hero. I'm a Kennedy Democrat, the Reagan Republican, the Clinton Democrat, and the Trump Republican, just so you know. I'm all for taxes. That's all I think about all day long. That's all I write about. But if you look at it, I mean, Jack Kennedy put it this way, he said the best form of welfare is still a good high-paid job. And no American is ever made better off by pulling a fellow American down. And we're all made better off if ever any one of us was made better off. And then he ended it with the famous phrase that I used with Reagan in '80, a rising tide raises all boats. And that's exactly the campaign we ran on in '80 with the Kennedy tax cuts for creating economic growth. And it works, it really does. If you think about the inner cities here, and you think about, let's say, an inner city family, I'll say a black family in the inner cities, let's say, all right, they start earning more income, and what happens? Now, I've got a great story for you. Single mother in Philadelphia. She makes $29,000. This is law today. Now, she's honest, she reports everything, so there's no negative of any sort. She makes $29,000. I took that income, and I went through all the taxes that she paid on it, and I got her after-tax income. You with me? And then at that income with one child, I went through all the state programs that she's eligible for, and I got the economic value of all of those state programs right in this book here. I got it all, and I got her total spending power if she has income of $29,000 a year. You with me? Now I said, what happens if she doubles her income? She's got this gumption. She just can't stand living in the inner cities and not working hard and doing the best, and she does all the best, and she doubles her income. She goes from $29,000 a year to $58,000 a year, and she's she's wore her knuckles to the bone and all this stuff. So I went through and I calculated all of her income. I took all the taxes out of that, got down to how much she has left over. And I went to all the state and social and local welfare programs and added them all up together. And her income was exactly the same as it was at $29,000. She faced a 100% marginal tax rate from $29,000 to $58,000. That's called a poverty trap. We're holding those people down and not allowing. You ever see the tax codes, how complex they are? That's a guaranteed way of making sure no one will ever bother you in your country club. Because how does a poor person who doesn't have I'm a Yaley, fourth generation Yaley. I got my MBA at Stanford, then I got my PhD at Stanford, then I started Chicago. I mean, I've had privilege all my life.
Right, but that working woman who now has gained dignity, right? I'm doing something, participating in this.
Yeah, and you're punishing her for it.
Right, I gained some dignity. If all she had to pay was a consumption tax, she could control that.
I agree with you.
She had control.
You're totally right. Now you want to do the other one. What I proposed in 1973, I couldn't get anyone. I tried to get Jerry Brown and some of the others to do it. I couldn't get them. But I proposed it. I lived in the south side of Chicago in Jackson Park Highlands. If any of you know it, 68 in Euclid. In fact, the story is that when my family and I moved to Southern California, my old neighborhood was no longer integrated. And it was. I lived there. It was great. We loved it. So I proposed that for the enterprise zone, that what you do is you have no payroll tax, either employer or employee, for anyone who lives within the enterprise zone, who has a job located in the enterprise zone. Now, if you think you're losing revenues, you're not. There's no one working there now. Believe me when I tell you. I get rid of no income tax up to $50,000 a year income. Again, the same story. I then had a thorough review of building codes, regulations, restrictions, and requirements to make sure that they're not anti-economic growth. You had to have copper pipes in the south side of Chicago. Come on. It's all just payoffs and all the stuff there, the aldermen and all that. And lastly, you've got to get rid of the minimum wage, the teenage minimum wage. The teenage minimum wage is the Black Teenage Unemployment Act. It guarantees these kids can never make it in this world. After being unemployed for a year, they're not worth $15 an hour. They aren't. And after being unemployed for a year or two, they become unemployable. After being unemployable for a couple of years, for some reason, I don't know why, they become hostile. And then you have to spend a fortune protecting yourself from them. This is what we've got to do. Get rid of those ceilings, guys. Have a low rate, broad-based flat tax. This is a great proposal. There are lots of other great proposals. What I would suggest you do is you make it, you get it on the ballot, you get going, and then you have it so it's modifiable.
I got one last.
Yes, sir. I'd like to.
Strategy boxes. You will see people who were opposed to this broad-based lower rate idea will say that is a progressive tax. In my mind, a progressive tax is real estate is an improvement in tax and income, because the more I make, the more I pay. Because it's a graduated scale.
It's a wealth tax.
Right.
It's awful.
I would say those two are progressive taxes. The only one that is not is a consumption tax. Because I can decide if I want to buy a new pickup or a used pickup. And I can decide if I want to send my kids to Harvard or if I want to send them to Norfolk Tech.
Do you have can I just do 2 minutes on just economics and not specifically examples here? Take a guy who makes $100,000. He has complete discretion as to how much he works. And let's imagine that guy has a 25% tax. And with a 25% flat tax, he makes $100,000, he gets to keep $75,000. And just when he hits that $100,000, working one extra dollar's worth is not worth 75 cents. It's worth, his leisure is worth exactly that. That's where he is, that's where he ends up. Now imagine we do it the way we do it in the US. We tax the guy nothing on his first $50,000. Then we tax him 50% on the next $50,000. Now he could still work $100,000 worth and still pay $25,000 in taxes, but he won't, because his marginal tax rate is so high that he'll produce less. Progressive taxes per dollar of tax revenue give you less out for the same thing. Now let's do it the other way. You want to have some fun. Now imagine you charge the guy $25,000 on the first $50,000 of income, you tax him 50% and nothing from them. It's the heart attack model. Oh my God, I can no, we're way more than $100,000. Incentives matter, they matter on the margin. And that's why I love this type of proposal here. Now again, I would say, Senator, full deference to you, I would not do a lot of the exceptions you have. You think you're doing it for political reasons, you're not, you're losing a punch. You want that lowest rate, guys. You really want it low, broadest tax base, and just leave it. We used to have a phrase, no how, you can leave it lay where Jesus flying it. And just, that's what you want to do with that low rate. And then you sit there with your budget committee, saying, who are the people we need to help in this state for a temporary period while they get on their feet and get going. And how you get rid of welfare payments that have put a cap on their lives. You just don't want to do that stuff. And
Other question I have, and I heard this yesterday. We can't make this switch over all at once, we gotta phase this in over time. You mentioned about California, you said, today is this tax and tomorrow is this tax. And that's the contention I have, is that we go January 1st, 24, the new tax starts. Now, you mentioned that you keep the high rate high enough so you have a revenue cushion in case you miss it. I asked research this question this morning. And the question is, because we collect income tax and property tax a year in arrears, if we start January 1, 24, we will collect income tax, corporate income tax, and property tax for 23 in 24. We're going to start collecting consumption tax on January 1st of 24. If we can do that, and here was what my question was, we did this in 66. In 66, the voters passed an initiative, just like we're going to do, that said January 1st, the state can only collect income and sales tax, no more property tax. So my question this morning to research was,